I've run out of these funny, snarky one-liners to lead into the video with, so let's just talk about the episode. Okay, so yes, Carbon Vanguard Shanae Monarch episode 9 and 10. One in on a fun secret, fun fact. This is me re-recording this because I realized immediately after recording last time that I accidentally said this was episode 10 and 11. It's not. It's 9 and 10. So I'm re-recording this all just because I said that multiple times in the previous video and I thought it was embarrassing. So let's just do this again. Let's talk about everything that happened. So in a lot of ways, this was what everything was kind of building up to, these two episodes. Esuka finally challenges Shin to a card fight, wins, and in the process wins the card drop, which is funny because that's something I mentioned me wanting them to do a little while ago. When Gonami and Shin had a card fight, I was like, what if Shin just lost the card fight? And spoilers, but again, this is an episode review, so I assume you've seen the episode I'm talking about. Well, yeah, spoilers, Shin does lose, and he loses the card shop, and that's cool. Unfortunately, the way they get around this is a little disappointing in terms of how they execute it, but there's a lot of potential in this premise at the very least, so that's something fun to talk about. So the first of these two episodes is the least eventful. It begins with a very, 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 very long stretch of just pointless jokes about Esuka having a buffet and everything. It's weird to me that there was a minor time skip in between this episode and the previous one. In the previous episode, it ends with Esuka bursting in a Halloween costume while everyone's still in the store and everything, and it kind of leads you to believe that the card fight is about to immediately begin, but instead we pick up a few hours later that night when no one's really in the store and Esuka is providing food for everyone for the success of the event, and there's a bunch of jokes about how Shin doesn't want to accept her food because it'll make him seem weak, but then he eats all the food anyway, and funny. I mean, I assume the point of these jokes is to kind of level out tone, I guess, because the end of this episode and the majority of next episode is fairly depressing, and so front-loading this episode with a bunch of jokes hopefully evens out the tone a bit more, but it just kind of feels like we're going nowhere. But then luckily, when Shin finally admits that he is willing to take the store seriously, that's when Esuka challenges into a card fight. And again, I think it would have been better if we just got the card fight immediately where we left off last episode, while there were still customers and stuff in the store, because episode 10 ends with the customers coming back to Esuka and basically guilt-tripping her into giving Shin another chance, basically. And it would have made more sense if, well, the customers could, actually see this card fight. It seems a bit random and out of nowhere the way they actually do it, and I'll get back to that in a bit. And so, yeah, we have a fun card fight, one that we actually see a decent amount of. It's a good card fight. They basically confirm that Esuka's a furry because she uses great nature, and a fun fact, that clan is only used by furries. And if me saying that makes you mad, then that just means you're a closet furry. Welcome to the club. Oh boy, we have fun here during these videos. So yeah, Esuka's a furry. That's the most interesting piece of information we've ever heard about a character, and they convey that in a very subtle way. Shin's about to lose. Rise is about to pull a trigger. All his friends give him the emotional pep talk about how you've not lost yet. We have luck on our side. And then I guess the arc pulls out what it wants to be. It's like really clever subversive trump card, but it ends up falling on its face. So Esuka reveals that all of the luck that Shin has had up to this point was actually her pulling the strings and trying to get him to this point. And it doesn't work. It doesn't. Oh boy. This twists where, haha, all the jokes that it was convenient that all these problems were sidestepped and everything. Because remember in my previous episode reviews, I was like, hey, they'd always set up a problem that Shin's about to face, and then they'd sidestep it with a joke that makes the problem seem irrelevant in the first place. Apparently, that was Esuka, and the example they give is that the guy who bought the tuna to get Shin out of debt was one of her employees. That was her idea in the first place, and it makes no sense. So first of all, that means that every time something like this has happened, it's been Asuka. So for example, I just have to imagine that when Mikuru was making those cookies, Asuka was actually hiding in the kitchen and pouring laundry detergent in while no one was looking, and that's funny. That would actually be a funny joke that I'd like to see, thanks. But whatever, let's just pretend that all those other examples of... See, it doesn't thematically make sense. I'm trying to word it in a way that makes sense, but basically this twist is to make it seem like Shin has never actually had any luck. And the luck was all actually formulated by Asuka. But there are so many times where they get lucky and it sidesteps an issue that very blatantly, very obviously doesn't actually involve Asuka at all. And again, the only example they give is the tuna one, and the tuna is the most nonsensical one they could have given an answer for, because literally that means, for this to make sense, Asuka would have also had to have had that little kid ask for the drawing and have the guy be willing to trade flowers and have the other guy be willing to trade to painting and have like all these other things. Like Asuka would have had to have been behind all of it for the tuna guy to even make sense in the first place. Otherwise, well, what else would her plan have been? And that makes even less sense when you remember that the solution to all of this, the reason Shin gets a second chance in the first place, is because the kid that started this chain that ended up with the tuna that Asuka apparently planned in the first place was the same kid that guilt trips Asuka into giving Shin a second chance in the first place. This is why you do not make jokes important plot points, because they don't work structurally. It just doesn't make any sense, and I hate it. And you know how they could have made this better? They could have just actually had Shin be unlucky. Instead of doing this dumb, like, Aizen stuff from Bleach, where the villain's like, haha, every single thing that's ever happened up until this point was part of my plan all along, even the stuff that detrimented me specifically. Instead of doing that, you could have just had the friends give the speech about how Shin's always lucky, and then have him be unlucky and lose. That's the thing about luck. It doesn't need to make sense. It would have worked thematically, and it would have actually been a more dour and depressing ending anyway, because, wow, luck itself wasn't on Shin's side and there's nothing you can do about it. Because at least when you have a big supervillain who's like, oh yes, everything up until this point was part of my plan, at least you can go, oh okay, so I didn't specifically do anything wrong then, I did the best I could do. But when you just have bad luck, then there's nothing you can blame it on. You can't even necessarily blame it on Asuka putting the effort into fucking you over. The only thing you can say is, whoops, I didn't do well enough, and that's more depressing. So this joke about how everything was Asuka's plan all along is actually garbage. Throw it in the trash. It didn't happen. I'm retconning it right now. Nope, didn't happen. And this is the point where things start to get interesting, and it does, but it's also kind of disappointing. So basically now we have an episode where Shin doesn't own Card Capital anymore. Asuka does genuinely own it. And that's great. That's the kind of idea that you could base, again, an entire story arc around. And unfortunately, they get around it fairly easily. This episode gets us to a place where we kind of predict where everything else is going to go. Because the whole point of having a story arc, or a storyline, I guess, where Shin loses the card shop and Asuka now owns it, is it makes you think, oh my god, how is he going to get it back? Like, I genuinely don't know how Shin's going to get this shop back. I want to see what happens next. And that's what I was feeling, but not for very long, because in the duration of an episode, they solve it in a pretty obvious way. And again, he doesn't own the shop again by the end of the episode, but we're very definitively on a path towards getting the shop, the rest of which will be pretty predictable, right? Because basically what happens is, first of all, this is a prequel. We know he ends up getting the shop back again anyway, and I don't mind that, actually. You know, whatever, it's a prequel, you gotta do what you gotta do. I think what makes up for the fact that we already know he gets the store back in the first place is the fact that we don't know how he gets the store back. That part's interesting. If that part can be entertaining in and of itself, then you've got me. However, it's pretty milquetoast. Again, the solution is basically just that a bunch of kids guilt trip Asuka into giving him another chance because a bunch of customers and stuff from previous episodes come back to confront Asuka and are like, hey, where's Shin? Why isn't he running the store anymore? And Asuka finally caves in and is like, okay, fine, I'll give you another shot. I'm going to hold a shop tournament. And if you beat me in the tournament, then you get the store back. They even have a few moments here and there where Shin like catches her or they fall over and stuff, and Asuka's constantly blushing, and I'm like, why are you trying to get us to ship these two characters who we know from benefit of hindsight don't end up together, and why would they like each other anyway? Asuka revealed an episode ago that she had this giant convoluted plan to fuck him over in the most depressing and soul-crushing way possible, to an extent where it doesn't even make sense in universe. What? I mean, I gotta give them credit. They're really putting themselves out there and trying to make a memorable arc, which is better than I can say for the past few story arcs of the reboot. But man, it doesn't work. Okay, so back to other stuff that happens. So another thing that happens in this episode is Shin goes back to Misaki to apologize to her for losing the store. And we get a scene because of this that should have worked. In any other anime, this would have worked. But because this is Vanguard reboot, we can't have nice things and it doesn't work. Shin gets to Misaki's room, opens the door, and Asuka's in there. And Misaki is thanking Asuka for everything she's done. In any other anime, this would have been amazing. This would have been like such a whoa twist. But unfortunately, Carbide Vanguard, and especially the reboot, doesn't trust the audience to have an attention span, and had already spoiled this to us. We already knew. Every episode since episode 2 has had a scene where they mention or show Asuka's photo of Misaki and her family. We already knew that these two were working together. We already knew that Asuka had Misaki's best interest in mind. Hell, even Shin knew this because Asuka mentions a couple times that she was basically best friends with Misaki's dad. We already knew that Asuka was doing this for Misaki. In any other anime, they would have took the part out where we already knew about it and just showed us this scene out of context, basically. So our surprise would have been genuine, and so would Shin, because Shin, for some reason, seems surprised and devastated by this, but I'm like, you already knew. We already knew about this. But because this anime doesn't trust us to have an attention span and kept teasing it for so long, we already knew it was going to happen. Which is a shame, because if we didn't know it was going to happen, it would have been good. It would have been good. God damn it. It was so close. It was so close. It does kind of rub me the wrong way that Misaki is supposedly traumatized by her recently depressed parents to an extent where she develops a photographic memory because that's how traumatizing it was, and then immediately stops thinking about her parents and thanks Asuka for helping Shin and his problems. Like, surely that should be the thing, like, that should be the smallest problem on Misaki's mind right now. Like, oh no, this 5-year-old or 7-year-old or whatever, this very small child has just been traumatized by her parents' death, and the thing that she can't stop thinking about is Shin having to run a card shop and thanking Asuka for making it so that he doesn't need to run it anymore. What? I don't get it. In fact, that's a problem that the Vanguard anime has literally always had. It's never done a great job at really showing that, again, Misaki is so traumatized by her parents' death that she gains a photographic memory because she cannot help. Like, she physically cannot stop herself from remembering stuff because that event fucked her brain up so much. And yet, she seems fine, she seems chill, and I can kind of see, like, I can kind of let him get away with it in, like, the present day storylines where she's a teenager and she's had a few years to cope with it and everything, even though she does say that she refused to play Carbide Vanguard, the card game, for years because that was so traumatizing to her. But whatever, she's old, I get it, whatever, it's fine. But this is set 1 month after it happened. She's still in the hospital recovering from it, and she doesn't seem fazed in the slightest. I do not understand. I don't get it. which is weird because this episode is so hell-bent on making you feel so depressed and sad for Shin. That's another thing that bothered me, is the tone towards Shin, where he just sits around and mopes and starts crying and everything. And it's like, I get it, right? Him losing the card shop, this is a big deal to him. I understand why he'd be emotional by that. I just don't like the execution of it. This arc has gone out of its way to show us that Shin is a different protagonist to someone like Aichi. This is how Aichi would react to something like this happening. Shin, on the other hand, again, he's the Joseph Joestar of the group. I feel like he'd go around this in a different way. He'd still be emotionally damaged by it, but everyone handles that kind of thing differently to each other. And I feel like he's the kind of person who would work himself to death over this kind of thing. He would keep himself so busy and so distracted and kind of juggle so many things at once that he wouldn't have enough time to think about how depressed he is. And this would worry his friends because they're like, hey dude, you should probably slow down a minute and actually like think about things. It's like, no, I can't afford to think about things, otherwise I'll just fucking explode, dudes. And I would have liked that more. And I also would have, and this is a long shot, I know, I would have liked it more if the kids and everyone guilt tripping Asuka was Shin's idea. I would have liked that. Again, it would have fit with Shin's very outside of the box thinking when it comes to solving problems and stuff, where he physically tells his customers and everything to go up to Asuka and guilt trip them. I think that would have been a fun ending, but no, not allowed to have fun in this episode. Everything has to be depressing. And it's a shame because there's actually another thing in this episode I really, really liked. The return of Idol Mikuru was nice. I like that they actually brought that back, and I like that they confirmed that, yes, Mikuru does actually like being an idol. Her being embarrassed was genuinely the reason that she rejected it in the first place. Where Shin's like, oh, so you didn't like being an idol then? And she's like, no, I never said I didn't like being an idol, actually. I liked that bit. That bit was good. I wasn't expecting that to return, actually. But another thing I liked was Gonomi's arc. Gonomi has had such a great arc this series because I mentioned in a previous episode review that it's been a subtle one. At first, she acts very kind of uppity and snobby and everything, but slowly over time, without really drawing too much attention to it, she's been warming up to Shin and the others, and eventually like befriends them and starts hanging around the card shop. And Fujinomi does this as well, but mainly Gonomi. And it's got to the point now where she's basically betrayed Asuka. Now, she probably doesn't think that to herself. She probably doesn't think in her brain, haha, I betrayed Asuka. But more so, she's the reason Shin keeps going. She's the one who goes up to Shin and goes, hey dude, I know you ain't like this. You need to keep trying. And that's the thing that gets Shin to kind of cheer up a bit and start like going up to Asuka and trying to win the shop back. And that's funny because, again, a few episodes ago, Gonomi mentioned that Asuka was like the only person that she respected and everything. And yet now, because she just saw a friend that was sad and in need, she completely forgot that and was like, no, you're standing up for yourself and you're solving this problem. And I really liked that. It felt very human. It felt very subtle. It felt very nuanced. It felt like something someone would actually do because it's against Gonomi's best interests to help Shin, but because she's hanged out with him and his friends and card fighting him and everything, she can't help but root for him, and I like that. I wasn't expecting Gonomi to be the character they'd bothered to portray with subtlety and nuance, but hey, I'll take it. So yeah, that was Kaioh Vanguard Shinemon arc. Now we're on our way to a shop tournament with Asuka, and well, I'm not getting my hopes up for this tournament, and you want to know why? Because Koshien, because skipped card fights, because this tournament probably isn't gonna be very good. Gone are the days of Kaioh Vanguard G Next, when we actually had good, fleshed out tournaments that took their time, but whatever. If this tournament impresses me, I hope it does. I really do. And I'll see you later with the next few episodes of Kaioh Vanguard Shin.